Here are two true, terrifyingly unexplained stories. This first story was submitted by Jim.
The night my brother and I thought we were being stalked by aliens was unforgettable. We lived in a house in the woods with a small creek running behind it, emptying into a larger river just beyond the wooded area. My mom used to send us down to catch brookies, and sometimes we would spend the whole day fishing. We usually always went to the same spot under some trees next to the creek. On the other side of the creek was a marshy area with lots of bushes, flowers, and tall grass, but no trees. There were always lots of insects, like butterflies and grasshoppers, and many flying bugs, so there were always tons of birds. Occasionally, a deer or two would come down for water. We loved watching all of this. However, on this particular day, something felt off. The air was stagnant and unmoving, the birds were all gone, and there was nothing moving around, no insects, no animals. And the atmosphere felt thick. We thought it might be a storm coming, but there was no sign of that in the sky. It started to get dusky, as if the sun had been swallowed by a giant cloud. We also didn't catch anything, which was not normal at all. We both just sat there, trying to catch dinner. Then I started noticing a strange feeling, as if I could hear or feel, or both, the humming. It was uncomfortable. I was about to say something when my brother spotted a light in the trees on the other side of the meadow. At first, we thought it might be our dad looking for us, but then we realized it couldn't be a flashlight. It wasn't moving around like one would be, and the light was too big. We looked for a plane or something, but there was nothing, just a dark, empty, silent sky. The lights were coming closer to us, so we decided to head for home. To get there, we had to cross a bridge that was a fallen tree. We were right in the middle of the bridge when the light appeared in the trees beyond the meadow in front of us. I was so scared, I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. My brother was scared as well. He was pale and frozen in his tracks. I grabbed him by the arm and pulled him down under the bridge. We stood there, paralyzed with fear, watching the light search for something. Then, the light shut off and a silence ensued, unlike any I have ever felt before. Just as we thought it might be safe, a strange, animal-like huffing and grunting sound was above us on the bridge. I didn't hear it walking up to or on the bridge. The water was so cold. My brother and I held on to each other. It felt like hours had passed until, all of a sudden, the forest came alive with all the normal nighttime forest sounds. We slowly crawled out from underneath the bridge, looked around, and started running. I don't think my feet even touched the bridge. I can't remember feeling it anyway. When we got home, my mom was startled by the way we looked. We couldn't bring ourselves to go back there for a long time. We were never able to explain what happened or why everything was so strange by the creek that day. My brother believed that we were almost abducted that day. I think I can agree.
Before we get to the second terrifying story, if you like to hear more scary stories, follow me on TikTok and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find me under Madam Night Terror. I would love to hear your stories if you want to submit a story and would like to see it on my channel. You can submit stories to my email. The email is in my bio. Thank you for watching. This second story was submitted by Sam.
The most terrifying night of my life. I'm a solo camper and always have been. There's nothing better than being in the woods and letting your stresses float away in the mountain air. However, this night was different. I had a 3-day weekend, so I planned a camping trip with my ever-faithful companion, Knox. He is a large Catahoula who loves the camping life as much as I do. I should also mention, he is deaf. He was born that way, but it doesn't slow him down. I finished getting our gear loaded up, did the hand gesture for load up for Knox, and off we went. Knox and I have been camping together for 5 years, and every one of them has been amazing. That is, until this time around. We got to our favorite spot but made the rash decision to go to a spot we had to hike to. I parked the truck and grabbed the gear and started hiking. We hiked for about 2 miles before I found this amazing spot. It's a small little clearing just big enough for my tent. It has a fire pit, so it's obviously been used before. There's a small creek that runs about 20 feet away. This was a beautiful find. I quickly got my gear out and started putting up my tent. Knox kept dropping the ball under my feet. I tossed it for him. He went and caught it and brought it back under my feet. He doesn't know that I'm not paying attention to him. He just wants that ball thrown. After I got all set up and put all my gear out and got the stuff set up, I got my fishing poles all put together and decided I wanted to go catch dinner, so I followed the creek a little ways until it opened up into a small river. I settled in for a good fishing session. I didn't have much luck. I caught a few small ones here and there. I started noticing that Knox wasn't doing his normal roaming around sniffing. He was close to my side, sitting almost on top of me, and he kept staring at a spot that was off to the right of where I was sitting, across the little river. I was starting to get an uncomfortable feeling. He wouldn't look away from that spot. I didn't see anything, I just kept fishing and trying to ignore it. Maybe it was a deer or something. When Knox started growling, I said, "Okay, time to go. There have been sightings of bears here." I cleaned the fish I did catch and headed back to camp. Knox was instantly himself once we got back to camp. It was starting to get dark by the time we made it back to the camp. I noticed that my camp had been messed with. My tent was open and my sleeping bag was sticking halfway out. I thought that was odd, as I know I closed my tent to keep the heat in. I shook my head and just cleaned it up. I got some firewood and got a fire going. Made my dinner, fed Knox. This is where it really gets creepy. As I was sitting enjoying the fire, I started to hear someone walking back in the trees. Didn't really think anything of it as I'm next to a creek, so it could have been deer coming to get a drink. I started paying attention to the sound. It was definitely not a deer, it was making too much noise for that and it sounded bipedal. I looked down at Knox and he was alert and looking in the direction of the sounds. Thinking it was probably campers nearby, I decided to go to bed, lit my lantern, put the fire out, and crawled into my tent. I got Knox and myself situated and drifted off. I awoke sometime later to the sound of someone walking very close to my tent, and Knox was growling. Now remember, Knox is deaf. I started getting very nervous. Then I heard knocking, like someone hitting a tree with a stick. It came from multiple directions. I called out, "I'm armed. Please leave my camp." That was a mistake as it made things ramp up. Whatever was walking around my small camp was now huffing and growling low. That started to make me feel sick. Knox was now standing between me and the door to the tent, growling. I was now hearing two things walking around my tent, hearing strange whistling, and what sounded like rocks being thrown, and I was still hearing this knocking with sticks. At this point, I was in a panic. I was trying to remain silent, but Knox was continuously growling and getting more agitated. I made the decision to put his harness and leash on and decided to make a run for it. I didn't even get dressed fully. I just put my boots on, grabbed the leash, ripped open the tent zipper, and dashed out of my camp. I was running, and I heard something chasing after me on 2 feet, which kicked my running gear up to full speed ahead. I got to my truck, Knox, and I jumped in, started it. The headlights came on, and I saw a very tall shadow, like 8 to 9 feet tall, dart behind some trees. I didn't even wait. I threw my truck into reverse and hauled my ass out of there. I came back 2 days later to get my stuff, and my camp was totally destroyed. My tent was literally ribbons. My stuff was strewn all over the place. My camp chairs were destroyed and bent. I collected everything that was salvageable and everything else. I just put it in the back of my truck to take to the dump. That was about 2 years ago. I haven't been brave enough to go back out camping. That night terrified me to my core.